Hello everyone and welcome to another Halloween Caesar review. Today I am reviewing a prototype version of Burning Rome designed by Emil Larsen. This will be on Kickstarter July 18th, 2017, and it is a two-player strategic card game of ancient battles with kind of an ancient Rome type theme to it. And there are multiple factions, 4 different factions of decks that the game comes with, as well as some expansion, a barbarian expansion, a standalone expansion on the horizon as well. So again, these are prototypes. Some of the artwork is not, complete for these as of yet, but you have all the numbers for the different attack values and defense values, and all the different actions and special abilities for the cards developed. And one thing with Emil Larsen that's really nice is he, I think, is a designer that really listens to the feedback that I've seen provided by different people who have played the game, and so he's really open to that and really just wants to provide the best game possible to everyone. So anyway, so the other cool thing about this is, so you have these different decks. There's, as you can see, lots and lots of different cards available. There's kind of melee type infantry, as well as you have some missile infantry. You have kind of tactic cards, which are more just kind of like basic different actions that you can do that represent the strategic planning in the game. There are certain general cards that you can use, and so you have this great array of cards to choose from. And the game you can play in kind of a quick battle format. The instructions have, suggested decks that you can create from the different factions and battle against one another, as well as different ancient battle scenarios, which is a little more specific. It has certain cards for each of the players, but it also has a certain starting layout of how those are going to be laid out on the board. So I'm going to show you just the kind of a quick battle scenario of how the game plays a little bit. So there's going to be this little section in the middle between the players. It's going to keep track of the player turn order and who's the attacker, and it's going to go back and forth. In the quick battle play, once you reach the end, you just kind of start over. It just is going to keep track of whose turn it is, basically. But in the ancient battle formats, there's going to be other end conditions. So you may need to just survive through a certain number of turns, for example. So each player has a little player tracking board in front of them as well. It's going to keep track of their army strength, or AS as it's referred to on the cards, or your CP, which is your command points. So each player will set up with 9 command points and 13 army strength. And from there, the first player, you'll just draw a card randomly. Whoever has the highest attack strength will go first. You shuffle that card back into your deck. Let's say my opponent had that. What they're going to do is they're going to move their command point down by 1, and they're going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. And then, since I'm going second, has a little bit of a disadvantage, I'll keep my 9 command points and I will draw 5 cards. And of course, these will be secret in my hand, but I'll just kind of lay them out for you. And so from then on, what players will do is if they have any exhausted abilities, abilities that can be used over and over again, they would use that ability, place a token or something to show that that has been exhausted that turn. At the beginning of your turn, you're going to remove those and refresh your cards. And then you have an interesting decision. You can choose to draw one additional card into your hand, or you may choose to move your command points up by 2. That's the kind of initial phase, and then from there you have the opportunity to spend command points to play cards. So let's go ahead and kind of show you a basic card here. We have different attack values depending on its position in the front or the rear. We also have defensive values for the front and rear. Here's the command points that it cost, or the cost to play that card. You have the symbol that shows you this is when the card is played. You perform this action. You may play one medium unit for free. So you place this one, you can place another medium one for free. We don't have any other medium cards in our hand right now, but that's what that would do. We also have these ones here, which are kind of ongoing. All enemy beasts have a -3 defense. So this guy is good at taking out the beasts of the enemy. So they're all kind of have different abilities to them that really make sense with what type of character or unit they are. This is my general for this game. And generals usually have pretty good abilities. This one here, the enemy can't play tactic cards with cost of 2 CP or more, which is pretty good. This only costs 1, so if an opponent had a similar card, they could play that, but 2 or more, they wouldn't be able to play those, and they basically become dead weight in that player's hand. So anyway, you can play as many cards as you want. The thing that you have to be careful with is the win condition in the quick battle, which is basically you can take your opponent's army's strength down to 0, or your opponent's CP or command points goes down to 0. So you have to kind of balance your command points and the army strength. You don't want to let either one of those get down too low. And yeah, so as you play them, you can play them into 3 different sections. As kind of you can see these lines here. You can play on the left, the middle, or the right. And as you place cards, what's going to happen is you may play this one here. I have not been able to use that ability, but as I play a card on top, I'm going to be covering up these other symbols, so they're not going to take place. I'm also covering up this unit's ability. So now, instead of this 2 and 1 for this row, I'm going to add up my attack and defense for this row. So now this is going to turn into 2, and whatever the rear card is, you're going to use that value instead. So I'd have 2 plus 2, 4 attack, and I'd have a defense of 1 plus 0, so I would still have a defense of 1. And the other interesting thing is these attack values you're going to compare to your opponent. So I have my 4, and it lines up the attack and the defense here. So I have my 4 against their 0. I also have, if they were to attack, their 1 against my 1. So I would take no damage from an attack from them, and if I attack, they're going to take 4 damage. So you're not going to remove cards through this attack value. This isn't going to cause this person to be removed. There are cards that cause cards to retreat. But any damage that goes beyond the defensive value will go directly on your opponent's army strength. And so that's pretty much it. The general's kind of a special card. It always floats to the top, so instead of cards going to place on top of the general, if you wanted to play a card in this column, I would actually place it directly underneath the general. And this could be good because some of the cards, very powerful cards like the elephant cards in this deck, will actually be very, very strong, but when you play them, you have to take 3 damage to your army strength. And so it can be very strategic to have your general out here and place certain cards underneath it. As well as utilize the general in certain capacity to keep your attack values and defense values where you want them to be. And you continue like this until you get your opponent down to 0 in either the command points or the army strength. And that is really the game. Any of the tactic cards get played to the side. Here's an example on this. Choose 1. You can return 1 enemy beast. The enemy gains 1 CP, or you deal 3 damage to the enemy army. A little offensive tactic. Here's a different one. You can move 1 friendly unit and play 1 unit supporting it for free. So that allows you to move one of these other cards around. And there's some really interesting decisions as far as playing certain cards at certain times. So you may have a card that seems pretty good for maybe a later, but you kind of need some defensive value, and so you have to play that first, and then at some point that's going to be covered up by another card. So moving units around can be very useful, causing opponent cards to retreat. There's all sorts of different action and ability cards that play into it. But it's a very simple game. It's pretty easy to teach, and I think the concepts are pretty simple. But you have, again, lots of different cards at your disposal. So the replayability of the game is fantastic. The feel of it is really good as well, and like I said, it's very thematic as far as what the units are and what their strengths are, and each of the factions kind of have a certain feel to them as well. So that is Burning Rome, and again, it is on Kickstarter starting July 18th. And if you like 2-player card games, again, this is a pretty quick game. It takes probably about 15, 20, 25 minutes, depending on how the game flows. But it's a pretty quick game, easy setup, and it has, again, some interesting choices and decisions. You need cards. Do you need the CP? As you get this lower and lower, it's going to be a more and more difficult choice if you only have 1 card in your hand. But if you get too low, you got to watch that. So sometimes it's more strategic to take the 2 CP and even hold on to those other cards. So there's a lot of interesting choices and decisions in the game, and then it's very quick. So you may have a hand, you're like, oh man, I can't really, not drawing when I need to. Sometimes that can happen. So it's an interesting challenge to see what you can do with the cards that you're actually dealt. And yet, if you do find yourself in kind of a rut, the game isn't that long and you can play another one. So anyway, that's Burning Rome. Really enjoyed my playthroughs of this. So go check out the Kickstarter. You can read other reviews as well and see the other content. I believe there's going to be a print and play available as well, and you can try it out yourself. And that is Burning Rome by Emil Larsen, and a fantastic two-player strategic war card game, and that is how Lou sees it.